Welcome back to Power Play. Well, Brad Wall leads a province that leads the country in mineral exploration, not to mention its burgeoning oil and natural gas industries. And he's also leading the charge on looking for efficiencies in our healthcare system. Certainly a ton of candidates for improvement there. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but Premier, I'd like to begin with your thoughts on the new way that Ottawa's proposing natural resource projects get approved. Not a lot of details, not a lot of time to go through the details, but what's your initial assessment?
Well, in principle, we're very supportive of the move, and we're grateful that the federal government's made this decision. Western premiers for some time, and certainly in the province of Saskatchewan, our leadership has been asking for this, where we would have a rigorous environmental assessment of projects before they happen, but that we would only have one, that we would remove some of the duplication that happens when both levels of government are involved. And you know, there's a number of examples of projects in our province that have been held up, not because they haven't met environmental standards, but because of a drawn out duplicative environmental process because of two levels of government. So we've asked for this, and the federal government are moving in the direction. They're reserving the right, as you know, to get involved in projects at cross borders, interprovincial projects, and some other instances. I think I'm hearing today that they're also wanting to make sure there's a greater opportunity for First Nations input into some of the projects. So on the whole, we're very supportive, and we think this will both achieve the environmental rigors that we want for project approval, but also improve the climate for Canada and Western Canada to continue to lead in resource development.
How much duplication was there really, though? I mean, I think everybody will argue about efficiencies and that it's a good thing. But some of the environmentalists have pointed out, you know, some things that Ottawa was doing, for instance, fish habitat management, that the province wasn't doing in the same way, that they may be now withdrawing from that, which is an environmental concern.
You know, I'm not sure common sense was always brought to bear in those instances. And maybe, you know, I have a few examples. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans would get involved in projects. There was one in particular on a mine in Saskatchewan where a man-made pond happened to have a fish in it. And the presence of that fish held up permits and held up the process for a very long time. Another example of a gold mining company that had to build a bridge over a stream bed that had been dry for as long as anyone could remember. They designed the bridge, and the federal DFO said, no, the bridge isn't high enough because it needs to be able to accommodate boats that will go under the bridge on this dry stream bed. So again, I think there's a common sense factor that has to come to bear on these, and the provinces are going to be engaged. We have a rigorous environmental process in Saskatchewan. We have the duty to consult with First Nations in Saskatchewan. Every province does, so why duplicate these?
But when I look at your province, I mean, it's wonderful what's happened to Saskatchewan in the last 10 years, and it's happened under the old regime, I mean, under the old regulation. So, I mean, how much of an impediment were they really if a province like Saskatchewan can go from where it was to where it is based on its natural resources endowment?
It's a fair question. I think the corollary question to that is, yeah, but can we do better? Can we still achieve the environmental rigor we want for project approval and have that process even more efficacious to build on the Canadian advantage that's growing in terms of natural resource development, the Western Canadian advantage, what we call the Saskatchewan advantage. So I think it's reasonable for governments to ask, how can we do better in terms of investment attraction, in terms of our business climate, without sacrificing the environmental standards that we want brought to bear on any project before it's approved.
You talk about how can we do better. Let's move to healthcare, because that's the reason that you're here in the nation's capital, is to talk to other people about some of the experiences that you're having in Saskatchewan. And I'd like to, I mean, I think there's many Canadians out there that have relatives or they themselves are within the healthcare system. Tons of sort of administrative inefficiencies that you run across and a lot of frustration about that. What have you discovered in Saskatchewan that you can bring to the table as a best practice for everyone else to consider?
Well, first of all, we have had some success in terms of health reform and what we call bringing lean techniques to health management, some innovations using private clinics within the public system to reduce wait times for surgery. But I should be clear, we have our own challenges. Our emergency rooms have too long a wait time, frankly. That's a priority. We have still too many people waiting for surgery. We have lots of work to do in our our province, as every jurisdiction does. But these techniques and these innovations are bearing fruit. I'll give you a couple of examples. By applying lean management techniques to the healthcare system, we, for example, improved the management of the inventory of blood, of red blood cells, saved $10 million, made the process more efficacious. We've reduced the wait time at the cancer agency between diagnosis and that CT scan, or the first visit and the CT scan, by 92%. We've reduced the size by applying lean techniques to the design of the new children's hospital, reduced its size by 16% while still not giving anything away to the proper design of a facility. That'll save millions of dollars. In terms of time lost to absent workplace absenteeism, that's reduced, millions saved, and so we can see better care and better value with more work needed, I'm first to admit, and we can see shorter wait times for surgery.
But are the improvements accelerating? Because one of the things that you wanted to bring to the table was a fund that Ottawa didn't end up funding, which was to look at these kinds of innovations and share them and actually supercharge them. Right. Is it happening fast enough, do you think, or or like Ivy, are the inefficiencies sort of growing faster?
Well, it's true that innovation typically it costs some money up front. There's an upfront investment, and it would be great to have a national fund that was making these things a priority, especially if it's proven innovation, if it's things that we know will work and deliver better care more efficiently. I'm still convinced that the federal government will be a meaningful partner. Perhaps it'll be on a one-off basis, and we can't let go of that opportunity. But yeah, I think in terms of healthcare, progress is always too slow. By definition, it means people are waiting too long, or care could be better, or it's taking up 40-some% of a provincial budget in our case, in most cases. So I think that's the point. We can always be doing better, and the committee that Premier Giz and I are hosting of health ministers, reporting back to the premiers this summer, is all about that. Is all about making improvements and keeping our eye on the ball.
All right, Premier Wall, good to see you in Ottawa. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.